Okay, welcome to the 16th Mapping Ancient Africa seminar. Today we have Stéphanie Bodin joining us, and she's going to take us to the Ethiopian highlands. Welcome, Stéphanie.
Thank you.
Okay, over to you. I look forward to it.
So yeah, I'm going to talk about the hunter-gatherers and the Afro-mountain vegetation in the southwest Ethiopian highlands since the African Humid Period. So let's go. Oh, does it work? No. Ooh. Ah, yes, it does, but with my mouse. Interesting. Okay, anyway. So why the highlands? So they are part of the Eastern Afro-mountain biodiversity hotspot, and they host, I'm gonna move that. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And they host a lot of different vegetation types. So in the highlands, you can find a forest and also savanna quite up in altitude. And so because of that, they probably had a high resource potential for the hunter-gatherers. And the question we have in our project in Frankfurt, because I'm part of the, I should have said I'm a postdoc in the Senckenberg Institute in Frankfurt in Germany, and I'm working in the frame of a DFG project. And so the questions we tackle are: what was the environment for hunter-gatherers in the southwest Ethiopian highlands? What were the plant resources that they were using? What about landscape management? So we wonder if the hunter-gatherers may have opened the landscape using fire. And what about their mobility? So were they staying in the Afro-mountain forest? Were they moving along an altitudinal gradient to take advantage of different vegetation types? So here is a map of Ethiopia showing different vegetation types today. So the different colors, they indicate the different vegetation types. So in green, you have the Afro-mountain forest. The light green is the dry Afro-mountain forest. I don't know if you can see my mouse. I hope so. The bluish green is the moist Afro-mountain forest. And then the yellow and the pinkish are the savanna, let's say. So the yellow is the Combretum terminalia woodland. The pinkish color is the Acacia commiphora bushland. And so these are the main vegetation types of interest for us. And I also represented on this map some archaeological sites that are all located in the highlands. And the two sites that we are studying in the frame of our project are Sodicho and Mochena Borago. So they are two rock shelters located in the dry Afro-mountain forest. So I will talk mainly about the results that we have about these rock shelters, but then I will have just a few words about other sites that are interesting for comparison and to better understand the hunter-gatherers' relationship with the vegetation in Ethiopia, in the highlands. So I will talk mainly about the results of these two papers. So my colleague Manuel Casas Gallego, so he was in our project, and now he's in the University Complutense of Madrid. He led the paper on ecological niche modeling. It was published last year. And I will talk also about paleoecology and more specifically about charcoal results from the Sodicho rock shelter. So that was published just this year, at the beginning of the year. So this is the so pretty big, and you can see the inhabitants of the surrounding villages, and so it's located at 1,900 meters above sea level. And it's it's supposed to be in the dry Afro-mountain forest. I said supposed to be because now the forest is actually almost not present anymore. There is a high deforestation in the highlands. So there are only few patches of forest, but the vegetation that is supposed to grow there is the dry mountain forest. So on the right, this is a picture showing the vegetation around the rock shelter. So what does the modeling say about the vegetation? You have the maps that Manu produced. So there is the map of Ethiopia for 4K, and then two maps centered around the rock shelters for 4Ka and 2Ka. And on the right, it's the map of the two-day vegetation of Ethiopia. So you can see that actually during the late Holocene aridification at 4K, the forest was much more extended. I'm wondering, yes, it's a good map. I had adopt. It's much more extended, and the rock shelter are located in the forest at this time, so both at 4K and 2K. And if you look today, especially for Sodicho, it's way closer to the Comboretum terminalia woodland in yellow. So you might think that Sodicho on the right is now in the ecotone, but actually it's supposed to be in the forest. And back in time, it's same. It was supposed to be in the forest. For Mochena, it's clear. And compared to the African humid period, during the late Holocene aridification, there was an uphill shift of the forest savanna ecotone. And so what paleoecology says now about the past vegetation? So it's interesting because we have something that seems a bit different from the modeling. So here again, there are the two maps for 4K and 2K. And we have phytoliths from the rock shelter. And in blue, it's the proportion of unburnt phytoliths, and in red, the burnt phytoliths. So you can see that for both periods, it's quite a lot. And that raises a question because the forest, it's not supposed to burn. It doesn't burn by itself. I mean, the lightnings wouldn't burn the forest. So if there was fire, it means that it was ignited by humans. And it's interesting because the charcoal are in agreement with the phytolith results. So here I just show the main taxa that I found because there was a strong dominance of 3 taxa. So I found the same taxa for these two periods, around 4K and 2Ka. I found a lot of Proteaceae, and they are plants that are promoted by fire, and they have a thick bark. So maybe you can have a glimpse on this photo. Then I found a lot of acacia, a lot of Syzygium guineense as well, and a bit of Comboretum of Comboretum charcoal, 3 different types. So it's interesting to see that Protea and Comboretum also, they are fire indicators. And they are also quite typical of the Comboretum terminalia woodland. So they are not typical of the dry mountain forests. So it means that if there is charcoal of this type of plants, it means that the vegetation was probably more open, and there was fire that could promote them. So this is in agreement with the phytoliths. And so paleoecology says that because we have these Proteaceae, these Comboretum types, but also forest taxa, Syzygium can grow in the forest, and I didn't show the whole charcoal assemblage, but I also had forest taxa. The rock shelter was actually, according to proxy data, in an ecotonal situation between the modeling, the model says. So we have fire indicators and burn phytoliths. So people were putting fire in the landscape, probably opening the landscape. And it's interesting to note that we have a strong wood selection, firewood selection with acacia, Syzygium guineense, and Proteaceae. And this is something I want you to remember somehow, because I will go back to this firewood selection later. So basically for Sodicho, we see that proxy data, it bring more information to the modeling. So the rock shelter was probably supposed to be in the forest like the model says, but with the influence of people, it was actually in a more open vegetation. So what about Mochena Borago? So it's another rock shelter that is a bit more up in the highlands. So Sodicho was at 1,900 meters and Mochena Borago is at 2,300 meters. So it's a bit higher and it makes a difference actually. So here you can see some pictures of the rock shelter and the surrounding, and it's very huge. It's way bigger than Sodicho, as you can see on the left. And the vegetation looks more like a forest, actually, compared to Sodicho. And you can see, so the photo on the middle shows my colleague Manu, and behind him you can't see, but actually there is a waterfall and there is a ravine downwards. So there is a bit of riverine vegetation. The vegetation is a bit more humid, let's say. And so it's a bit different. And it's interesting to see that this difference is also visible in the charcoal record. So this is what we have. So for a reminder, on the left, this is what the model says. So the rock shelter was located in the forest at both 4K and 2Ka, but we have no burnt phytoliths in the whole sequence. And Mochena Borago has deposits that date back to the late Pleistocene. And there was no burnt phytoliths, either for the late Pleistocene or the Holocene. So that's a big difference with Sodicho first. And then the charcoal record is quite different. So this time we have a different assemblage between 4K and 2Ka compared to Sodicho. So at 4K, I had quite a lot of Proteaceae. So I'm quite sure it's a Protea species. I don't know which one, but Protea. So 20%, it's quite a lot. So that could mean also that there was a fire activity and there was maybe some kind of opening of the vegetation. But you can see also that I have other taxa that are very typical of the dry Afro mountain forest, like Prunus africana and Olea. They are very typical of the Afro mountain forest. And so it shows that either we had an ecotone, but I wouldn't say that because I don't have any combretum, for example. So maybe it was just some kind of mosaic with maybe some patches of open vegetation, but I wouldn't say that was an ecotone like in Sodicho so far. And at 2Ka, it's different because Protea is way less dominant. I have only 5%. And there are, most of the taxa are typical of the forest. So for example, I have a Sapotaceae and I have a Gymnosperm, either Juniperus or Podocarpus, I can't tell. And I even have a species that is typical of the moist Afro-mountain forest, Bligia unijugata. And it's interesting because the model shows that at 2Ka, the rock shelter was actually located in the moist Afro-mountain forest. This is the green bluish part. So it seems that between 4Ka and 2Ka, something changed, and that at 2Ka, it's mainly a forested environment. So to summarize a bit what happens in Mochena Borago, so it's still under study. Around 4-5Ka, I have a lot of Protea and Prunus. So does that mean that there was a more open environment, some patches of maybe open forest, degraded forest inside the forest itself? At 2Ka, something changes. There are much less Protea fragments. So does that mean that the forest was denser, or does that mean that the human influence was just reduced at this time? For sure, there was a shift in firewood selection through time, because if I go back, you can see that the dominance of taxa is not the same between one period and the other. It changes. And there was no burnt phytoliths through the whole sequence. So there was probably a different use of the rock shelter through time. But what does it mean? What kind of use? And compared to Sodicho, what does it mean? We don't know yet. As I said, this rock shelter is still under study, but it seems that it was different. It may be different from Sodicho. And we are happy to have insight from other sites in the highlands. So our colleague Alemsegat Beldados from Addis Ababa University, he studied 4 rock shelters in the Bale Mountains. So the rock shelters are located between 3,000 meters to 4,000 meters. So it's a different type of vegetation. It's the Ericaceous belt and the Afro-Alpine belt that are present at this altitude. And he found in the 4 rock shelters, he found only 4 charcoal types. So 3 Rubiaceae and 1 type that is Erica. And so that's pretty incredible that he found only 4 types through the 4 sites and through the Pleistocene and the Holocene. So it means that there was a strong firewood selection and probably a tradition even of firewood selection. And we could have some discussions with people from Marburg working on the Bale Mountains. And in particular, Georg Mihe, he told us that it seems that in the Ericaceous belt, there were no very interested Rubiaceae species for firewood. So we hypothesize that hunter-gatherers at these times, they were probably going down to the dry mountain forest and picking up the firewood there and bringing up in the highlands. So previous studies show that archaeological studies show that there were bones of mole rats in this rock shelter. So probably people were hunting mole rats, and staying there for short periods, for a season of hunting, for example, but we're not living there. And it makes sense. I mean, we've been quite up, but not as much. When we were in Ethiopia, it was, I think, more than 2,000 meters, and it was already very windy. It seems that at this altitude, you can't live year-round. So it makes sense that people were just going up for certain purposes. And so that means also that the hunter-gatherers were very mobile and were probably taking advantage of the full range of taxa they could find through the dry mountain forest, maybe the moist mountain forest, and the Ericaceous belt. And so we will be able to compare what happens in other Afro-mountain forest sites. So there is a PhD student, Tafera Tarekain, who works on charcoal from the Kumali rock shelter in the Kaffa region. So you can see in yellow on the map. It's located at 2,200 meters. So it's a bit similar compared to Mochena Borago, but it's located in the moist Afro-mountain forest. So we will see if he finds an assemblage close to the one of Mochena or Sodicho or completely different. It will be interesting to compare. And our colleague Alemsegat Beldados will also study charcoal from the Bifa cave. So it's part of the Melka Kunture site. So there are six sites in the RC Mountains and Mondendi. They are located between 3,000 and 4,000 meters. So they are located in the Afro-Alpine belt today. And we wonder if we will see the same pattern as in the Bale sites. So we wonder if the charcoal recall will be very reduced with only a few taxa, with a strong firewood selection or not. And maybe we will find taxa from the Afro-mountain forest that would support what we think, that people were actually moving a lot and probably taking firewood from the forest. So the phytoliths will be available, and after when I'm finished with the charcoal from Ochena-Borago, I will study the phytoliths from these sites. So we will see also if there are burnt phytoliths and so. And I just wanted to have a last word about other sites that are being studied by another PhD student, Fria Tangesom. She does a PhD in France, and she studies sites from the Rift Valley. So the sites are now in the Acacia comifera bushland. And actually can be interesting to compare also because surprisingly, she already found Olea charcoal, and Olea is typical of the dry mountain forest. And it's pretty surprising to find Olea charcoal in these sites. But it also could mean that people were going also up to bring to collect firewood and bring them down. So it will be another matter of comparison that will be really interesting. And it's also nice because the fact that she found Olea charcoal, it fits with the models that Manu did because he showed that there were probably species of the Afro-mountain forest, not the whole block of Afro-mountain forest, but species of the Afro-mountain forest that were going down to the Rift Valley during arid phases, especially during the less glacial maximum. So but you have to check the paper for that because I'm not talking about the Pleistocene, but it's interesting that she found this Olea. So all these sites will bring us, I think, a quite complete picture of the movements of the hunter-gatherers in Ethiopia, not only in the highlands actually, and it will allow us to learn more about their mobility and the firewood economy also. So here on this slide, this is some bibliography about the main sites I was talking about. And no, I just want to thank my team. I mean, the whole project team in Frankfurt, but also the partners from Ethiopia, also from the US and in Germany. And thank you all for your attention. And now I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for a super talk. I think I lost internet connection partway through, so apologies for that, but I came back, and so hopefully that wasn't too much of a problem for everybody else. Do we have any questions for Stephanie? Rahab has quickly raised her hand. So Rahab, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Will. Thank you, Stephanie, for a nice presentation and quite like a good amount of work. My question is, how have you factored in the biasness that may be brought by some of the species which are prone to fire, like ericaceae are known to be quite prone to fire, and probably that's the reason why you have more charcoal from erica than you get from rubiaceae. How have you managed to check on that biasness?
Yeah, actually, yeah, so it's also prone to fire. As you said, it's really difficult to know if the fires in the ericaceous belt were natural or were lit by people. And it's something that is unclear. And I think the people in Marburg in this project, I think it's the Mountain Exile Hypothesis project, they couldn't answer this question because it's really tricky to know, okay, were these fires like natural or human induced? And my colleague Alem can't say that based on charcoal. It's really difficult to know, but yeah, I don't know if it answers your question, but at least the charcoal we have in the rock shelters, they are from from human fires, but
challenges. Yeah, I understand the challenges. Is it you look at the charcoal sizes, the size and the distribution across the sites to be able to tell like how the extent or the use of certain species versus others?
I'm not sure I got your question, actually. You mean is it possible to know for what purpose they were using this or that species, or?
Yeah, like whether it how would you tell if there was like a preference of certain species over the others?
If there were
For
what, sorry?
firewood, for firewood, like they would prefer these species other than the other species.
Okay. Most of the times in anthracology, so when we identify charcoal, we rely a lot on ethnography, ethnology. So we compare, for example, okay, today what is used as firewood in Ethiopia, and actually Erica is still used. And my colleague Alem Seged, he told us that there is a festival. He would tell better than me, but there is a festival in Ethiopia, and they go especially collect Erica wood. So we know that it's a valuable firewood. And for the rubiaceae, we were struggling because it's difficult to identify in a more precise way than the family level. And so we were checking, okay, which rubiaceae are known as good firewoods. And Georg Mieux, actually, he told us, yeah, in the Ericaceous belt, it's not there. So we were thinking, okay, so the species growing there, it's probably not these ones, but it will be difficult to tell, okay, what rubiaceae could have been this firewood. And yeah, we need to base our hypothesis on the firewoods used today. For example, in Sodicho, I had a lot of Acacia, Syzygium guineense, and in Ethiopia, there are still woods that are really appreciated for their firewood properties. So we can be quite confident that, okay, they were selected and they were dominant in the charcoal record because they are good firewood.
Mm. No, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I also think even with the modern societies, they would prefer to go to the species that are fire prone because they easily catch fire, they easily keep fire, as opposed to species that are quite resistant to fire. So I think it is logical to go to those that can quickly burn. Yeah.
And so
Thank you.
just as a sort of follow-up to that, so like the burning that you're imagining is taking place actually in the rock shelters. It's like collect wood, burn it back at those sites, or is this more burning that's going on elsewhere and material being brought back in another way? Do you have a feel of that?
Yeah, actually, it's a bit both. I mean, we are thinking about both. So yeah, there was probably collecting of firewood outside, and then people were bringing them in the rock shelter to cook, for example. But when we have the Proteaceae, the Combretaceae, we think it's related to bushfires. Because of the phytoliths, also the phytoliths results, there are a lot of burnt phytoliths, and they were probably blown into the rock shelter. So it means that there were fire outside. Yeah, but I mean, when I have some fire promoted taxa like Proteaceae combretum, okay, I feel more like, okay, so the fire could have happened outside. But for example, when I have species that are typical of the forest, I rather think that they were collected outside and brought to the rock shelter to light a hearth, for example. But it's difficult to say, and that's why it's very important to have a multi-proxy approach, and that's why the phytoliths are really good to help us. And actually, we also had some results from Amy Starring at Oxford University. She's studying the isotopes, and we hope that it will help us to better understand what happened in the landscape, actually, because with anthracology you have a very local picture, and yeah, we need also proxies that are more give a picture more broader than that.
So just a slightly leading question. If you knew the temperature at which your different charcoals had burned, do you think it would give you a clue as to whether they were like wildfires in the landscape or hearths within the cave setting? So would you expect a temperature difference in those sorts of fires?
Yes, I would expect, I think so, but I don't know. For example, for slash and burn, I remember I read the temperature. I can't remember, but I think you know it. But for hearth, I think I don't know I don't know it.
Yeah,
so
I don't
need to
know.
compare.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be different, but like if it was, then maybe we could find a way to look at that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would help.
Okay, do we have any other questions? You can either put them in the chat or please just shout them out or put your video on. Okay. If we don't have it, oh yes. Hello.
No, yeah, sorry. I have a quick question.
Yeah, please go.
Because you said
Quickly.
it could be natural burning, or it could be that humans were burning. So if that is the case, how would you then say things like the humans encroached those landscape, and that's why we have that? Or could it be because of the natural burning that allowed humans to encroach those landscape, and that further opened up, the landscape?
I mean, natural burning, yeah, it can happen more down in the savanna, but in the Afro-montane forest, it doesn't burn naturally. So if there was a burn, it means it was made by humans. If there was a fire, it means it was made by humans. And we could see in Sodicho that it led to an opening of the vegetation, because we have this typical, let's say, savanna forest taxa both together in the charcoal record. And we were thinking, okay, if they were opening the landscape, probably it was to improve the resource acquisition. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Any follow-up?
One quick comment about just for Stephanie to think about. It sounds interesting because now because Erikesi are actually like beyond the Afro-montane level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually they are exploiting, if at all, they're exploiting the habitats that are just above the Afro-montane altitude, above in the Erikesi belt as you go to the Alpine.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you mean it's not only in the Erikesi belt. That's what you mean?
Yeah, what I mean is that it's quite interesting because in the Afro-montane forest, I would expect that most of the species are quite dense and a little bit of resistance to fire, and it's easier to go and exploit the Erikesi belt because of the dominance and the monopoly of the species. Belt,
for Erica probably, it makes sense that they would just collect Erica in the Erikesi belt where they were, but it grows also in the dry Afro-montane forest. So, but that's something we can't know. But it was for the Rubiaceae. We were thinking they were going down to take this wood, but for Erica, they could have collected this wood in the Erikesi belt, and I mean, we don't say that they were collecting all the wood in the same vegetation and same area. Probably they were very mobile along an altitudinal gradient, and probably they were collecting wood along this gradient. I mean, would make sense. Depends also on the availability of food.
Yeah.
Okay, and just maybe a simple question. Do you know, you talked about the period between 4 and 2,000 years ago. how long have hunter-gatherers been operating in this area? You talked about back to the sort of Pleistocene. I mean, is the history of hunter-gathering in this region, does it go all the way back? I mean, is it a sort of continuous activity, or is it on and off, or does it come in at a particular point in time?
There are different chronology among the sites. For example, Mochena Borago, so it goes at least until 50 Ka.
Wow.
And yeah, and the charcoal are really well preserved. That's amazing. They are really beautiful. And then there are gaps. For example, we don't have archaeological deposits during the African Humid Period in Sodicho and Mochena Borago. Sodicho also goes back to the Pleistocene, but not as far. I think it's 27 Ka. And then for Kumali, which is in the moist Afro-montane forest, we only have the Holocene up to 5 Ka. So yeah, it depends on the sites, but according to Sodicho and Mochena, at least, yeah, there were people back to the late Pleistocene in the highlands.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, do we have a final question from anybody? If not, in which case I would like to thank Stephanie very much for a lovely talk. Great to see the charcoals. Great to see that all coming together. Really multi-proxy, multi-site study. Very impressive. Really great. So I'm gonna say thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's really nice.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be part of this seminar. That's great.
Yeah.
And
Super.
I just say, if you want to have access to the papers I was talking about, don't hesitate to ask me. I can send you copies, no problem.
Yeah, or you can post them on the Mapping Ancient Africa Slack channel, which I can link you in with if you're not already there. So you can
Okay.
and everyone can see them easily. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much and have a nice weekend, you all.